Awesome. Well, we can go ahead and slowly but surely get started as, we have some more people kind of creep in here. I think we're right on the hour now. So I'm happy to kind of kick it off and quickly introduce myself. I am Max Barat. I lead our BD team here at Life Science Nation. So I have the privilege of working really closely with a lot of the companies, primarily those on the East Coast. But we work with the companies, of course, to not only get them kind of set up to participate in our Resi partnering conferences. Specifically, this webinar is geared more towards those who may be pitching, participating in our Innovators Pitch Challenge. But we also help them through the access of our database and most importantly, just with education of if you're a first-time CEO, new to fundraising, or even a serial entrepreneur who is approaching a new fundraise at the early stage, how do you go about it? How do you qualify the leads, and how do you really do the BD sales 101 that it takes to, as we say, play the numbers game of fundraising and be successful doing so? I am joined by two of my incredible colleagues who I will let introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Dio, and I'm the VP of Product. One of my responsibilities is running our educational content, of which this presentation is a sample. We really believe that a startup can do a lot to succeed by being prepared ahead of time, before a pitching event, before a partnering conference, before starting your fundraise, and that really nailing those preparation steps can save a lot of time when you're doing your fundraise. And we really want to help you be as successful as possible, be it pitching at Resi or at any other event. These are going to be tips about that.
Hey everyone, I'm Rahul and I'm on the business development team and I support startups and early ventures like yours through our Resi conference and connect them with investors through our database. So really excited to see how we can help you and share some tips on pitching at the Resi conference and help you through your journey of fundraising.
Awesome. And some housekeeping things too. Karen, because I'm sharing my screen, I need you to call out if there's any questions that kind of get popped into the chat. We're of
Yep.
course happy to answer them either at the end or throughout the session. We're also going to be recording the session. So if you're late, have to leave early, you want to share it with a colleague or anything, we will send out and distribute not only the session slides, but also the recording at the end. We will quickly kind of start off, and I know we did a little bit of an introduction, but going through LSN, what we do, and then touching on our IPC. The good thing is, although this webinar is really focused on the pitch challenge at Resi, IPC, it is applicable to everything, right? So any kind of pitch you do, whether it be a formal pitch session or even just an investor meeting, is a pitch in and of its own. So the tips and the messages that we're going to share today are applicable to the entirety of your fundraise. We'll then kind of skip on more so to the formality of what makes a good presentation, the pitching material, the format of IPC, and then just prepping for some of the questions that you can expect investors to ask because they will ask questions, right? So I'm happy to quickly intro LSN. I know I kind of am able to skim through the attendee list and see that a lot of you guys are either attended Resi in the past or registered for Resi Boston June, this upcoming June 16th. So you may be familiar with what we do, but we really help in three main categories, right? So we help early stage companies connect with capital investors and strategic partners in these three ways. The one in the middle, and what we're really kind of the most well known for, is going to be the Resi Partnering Conference. So we host Resi typically 5 times a year. This partner event brings anywhere from 400 to 500 investors. We did Resi JPM in January. It had 700 capital investors together for in-person partnering, followed by virtual partnering options. The special and unique thing about Resi is that we vet our investors incredibly thoroughly. So we have a small team ourselves. There's typically, there's 15 of us at LSN. Five of us are full-time investor research analysts whose job is to vet these investors. Through that, we're able to A, make sure that they're not only representing active funds, but B, also get a really in-depth look at their fund. So we call that our investor mandate. That information then gets curated into the investor database, which is that top circle up there. So we have curated a list of over 3,100 different investors that composes everything from angels, family offices, traditional venture capital, all the way to private equity, hedge funds, endowments, foundations. There are 10 different investor groups that we track. So really anyone that writes a check, right? But at this early stage, we see family offices, angel syndicates, and VCs most commonly. And then the last thing down there is the entrepreneurial education. So we are in a position where we have seen hundreds of thousands of interactions between entrepreneur and investor. And we know what resonates well with the investors because we've seen it and we've asked them, we've surveyed them, we've interviewed them. So through that, we have been able to kind of compile a list of educational material, both webinars like this, as well as we have a video recording series that helps founders kind of approach fundraising for the first time. So we do a number of webinars, a number of, I think we have 14 video courses available out there, and a lot of educational work we'll do in boot camps as well. Um, but the next thing, and I kind of briefly touched on this before, is who are the investors in our audience, right? So I had mentioned it, we track 10 different types of investors. This ranges from anything from angel syndicates all the way to private equity. Obviously, there's a huge graphic up there indicating some of the investors that we have within our network. Not only are they capital investors, but they also are strategic licensing partners, right? So at the early stage, there are a number of different industry players that you need to be meeting with, should be meeting with, and at least should have on your radar. The fortunate thing is Resi is able to really niche down on the early stage market. And we know that if you are an early stage company, whether you are raising anything from a pre-seed through a Series B, which is really the sweet spot of kind of where our investors look to invest, um, there are hundreds and hundreds of VCs and groups out there that you do not know about that are well within scope of your current raise. So I will let maybe Karen and Raul share a little bit on this, but we talk a lot about the different types of VCs out there. And there's really three main types of VCs, Karen, that if you want to kind of share a little bit about would be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. So VCs will, and the traditional model was people would get angel money, then they'd go to VCs, then they'd get acquired. But VCs have expanded, and you have early, middle, and late stage VCs. And then the late stage VCs, they're the ones that are investing rounds of hundreds of millions in any round that they're investing. And so they're really looking for something that's probably pre-IPO or pre-acquisition. The middle stage VCs, they're investing probably tens of millions of dollars. They're looking for something that's, de-risked, not not the earliest stages. And then there are the early stage VCs, or a lot of times they're referred to as micro VCs. Now, their strategy is usually to invest a smaller amount in a lot of different companies, and really help them with the strategy and de-risking. A lot of these are active investors, investors that really firmly believe in investing in the early stages and helping startups get that expertise that they need to really be successful. So the best way to really be able to tell what type of VC it is by looking at the fund size, because that's going to be your best indicator. Um, an investor that has a $500 million fund is not going to invest $1 million. And vice versa, if they have a $50 million fund, they're not going to invest 10 million in a company. So that's really your best bet for knowing what type of VC they are.
And so next is going to be the Resi conference at a glance. This is essentially just who are the demographics of who is attending, right? So we say it is early stage, and when we say that, we tend to gear it towards anything from pre-seed through Series B. So we say seed is typically 1 to 2, Series A 2 to 10, Series B 10 to 50. And we use that as a very, very rough ballpark because the check size is more important than the name of the round. Um, However, Resi is a good breakdown throughout life sciences, right? So we work with therapeutics, devices, digital health, and diagnostics. and we welcome investors that invest in all of those sectors. So when we do our interviews with these investors, we will typically ask them um, four sets of mandate questions that indicate exactly where their fund is investing. So that is going to be sectors, subsectors of interest, indications, what's their stage of development, and all of that information gives us a really in-depth look to ensure that these are the right investors for early stage companies. Um, Raul, I will let you speak a little bit about the format of Resi because it is both face-to-face as well as virtual partner options, and then there's a number of other programming that takes place.
Right. Yeah, as Max mentioned, we have both virtual partnering and also face to face. But whole part of Resi is, it's a combined factor of that. In terms of face to face interaction, we also have the IPC, which we'll be talking about, which allows you to be in those subsectors that Max had mentioned, where you can pitch to investors that align with your goals, and particularly for your subsector. We also have, workshops and also the virtual partnering, which Karen takes care of a lot. So that really helps you connect with investors, and these kind of scopes really help you gain a track and build your relationship with investors. We also have other networking programs that allow you to, not only just connect with investors, but also other companies and other strategic providers that could help you along your fundraising goals as well.
Awesome. And so our upcoming conference is Resi Boston, which is taking place in person June 16th, and then we have virtual options on the 17th, 18th, and the 23rd. So pricing is on the screen. We actually have our early bird registration deadline this Friday. So if you want to save $200 on early bird registrations, I would highly, highly recommend getting registered before Friday. And those discounts are in place, obviously, for the entrepreneurs as well as any potential service providers. As Raul had mentioned, we have a number of other programming that takes place, right? So beyond just partnering, we also have expert investor panels. Of course, we have our IPC pitch tracks, and then we also have the educational workshops. The full agenda, although it's on the screen now, is also on our website, so I won't spend too much time discussing this, but you can see it touches on a number of really interesting early stage trends that no matter what company you're out there, it will be interesting for you to go listen to some of these investors speak about. So
I would also, Max, if I can just quickly interject, if you attend the Resi conference or if you're attending virtual only, recordings of the panels will be made available in the partnering platform. So even if you're attending in person, but you don't get a chance to see the panel live, you will be able to see it once the conference is over through the partnering platform.
yeah, and that's a really good point, Karen. And as well with IPC, all of those sessions do get recorded. So if you are a pitching company, not only is it a phenomenal opportunity for you to pitch to the investors, but it's also a really great opportunity for you to get that recording and then turn around and use it as promotional material of your own.
Yeah, and we have a question here about startups can attend the investor panels. Absolutely. The panels are for startups where investors talk about industry trends, what they see, what they would like to see, and how to approach investors.
So those are really designed for the startups to attend, which is great. So the next side is in IPC logistics, right? Who should apply? So I can kind of quickly go on my little spiel here. Yes, there's programming. Yes, there's pitch tracks. But at the core of fundraising is going to come down to a numbers game, which means you need to maximize the number of meetings you can get. And we are in life sciences in an industry with 90 to 95% failure rate if you're lucky. And our mantra at LSN is that we believe a number of reasons, but the biggest for that is going to be that founders and CEOs don't know how to play that numbers game of fundraising. When it comes to maximizing the number of meetings that you're going to get, which in reality, you need hundreds, right? So you need to be able to match and connect with hundreds of investors out there to maximize that numbers game. And IPC is the best way to do that. So it is intended for any company within the 4Ds, right? So drugs, devices, diagnostics, or digital health. If you are actively fundraising and looking to get in front of investors and maximize your exposure, not just to the VCs, but to the angels, to the family offices, and the other groups out there, the IPC is a great way to do that because not only do you get to pitch directly in front of them, but you are also given the opportunity to have a poster, a table space, and then obviously increased exposure throughout kind of Resi and our marketing material. So we have our IPC applications currently on the website. They are due this Wednesday. So May 7th. The information that it's going to ask for you as you fill it out, it can change. So yes, it will ask for a pitch deck, executive summary, and a headshot. You can always update those materials later down the road. But the reason we ask for them ahead of time is because the format of the pitch is it is a 6-minute pitch with 7 minutes of investor Q&A. So we understand that 6 minutes is quick. In fact, we used to do 4 minutes, right? So it used to be even faster, but 6 minutes is quick. And what we do is we gather the materials ahead of time so that we can send them to the panel of investor judges. That way, the judges can go through and they can see your material and have some familiarity with what it is you're doing. And we also gather this information just to ensure that we're putting you in front of the right panel of judges. That way, they are representing funds that actively invest within your area. So the form, it doesn't take too long. It takes 5 to 10 minutes to fill out, and you can find it directly on the website. We can talk a little bit more about the logistics of the session. I touched on it a moment ago, but at the high level, it is a 1 hour session. Typically, there are 4 companies pitching within that session. A 6-minute presentation with slides ahead of time, as well as then followed up by 7 minutes of live Q&A. So we put a big emphasis on this Q&A because it's really important for companies to really get a good sense of how they're doing and where they fare with investors, what types of questions are being asked, do they have appropriate responses, what is it that investors are really looking to see in their company. Um, and through that, you're able to not only get written feedback, but you'll be able to get a really good understanding of kind of what the investors are thinking about, if there's more information that they choose to see. Um, and we say that because the pitch itself is really designed to be a high level overview of your company, right? 6 minutes is not enough time for you to go up there and deeply explain the science and the differentiation factors between you and competitors. What it is enough time to do is go up there and touch really at a high level on not just here's my company, here's the market, but also address here's the technology, here's my management team, here's some of the key milestones I've hit and other reasons why our company deserves a first meeting. That IPC is really designed to get the first meeting with investors. And if you can go up there and pitch and then leave with 4 to 5 meetings, that is a huge win. Because we always say that it is not the full movie that you're trying to get across, it is just the movie trailer. So again, it is both within partnering and messaging, but as well as within this pitch. The purpose is to entice the investors into having a first meeting where you can then go and share more of the technical information, whether it be on milestones, IP rights, or your technology. All of that information can come in a later meeting. But Raul, if you want to touch on some of the other components, like the opportunity to connect with judges, as well as the top 3 winners do get Resi Cash, which I think we've done virtually now, but they also get prizes. So Raul, I'll let you touch on that.
Yeah, as Max mentioned, after the sessions, there's an opportunity to connect with the judges, and have that interaction there and get more feedback and insight. Another thing that Max had mentioned was Regi Cash, which is every attendee gets Regi Cash in a way to invest in their favorite startup. So it's a kind of a fun way to measure interest and visibility of your company as well, to see how well you're doing amongst the crowd as well. So that gives you further visibility and allows you to get more feedback. There's engagement from investors, and there's also potential for future free Resi tickets, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah,
And we have a question here about how many investors are in each IPC. On the investor panel, you will have between 4 and 6 investor judges. But there will likely be more investors in the audience. However, we can't guarantee that, but they are fairly popular, and we do see a decent population of attendees attending the sessions. You can, there's also here about, can a startup attend one to see what it's like? And then sign up for Resi in September. Yes, that's absolutely a possibility. If you would like to just attend Resi as in a regular attendee in June to see what it's like and then sign up to pitch in September, that's absolutely possible.
And so one of the things that we touched about that comes outside of just the pitch is each presenting company will also get an exhibition table and a poster space in kind of the main conference foyer. So for those of you that have attended Resi in the past, you've seen that we have a huge, huge room full of partnering. This year, the venue is at the Westin Copley Place in Back Bay, Boston. We did Resi Boston September 2024 there as well. So if you were in attendance for that event, you would have seen it. But we have a huge ballroom that is half filled with partnering, and the other half is full of exhibition tables for the presenting companies. So it's a really great setup for investors to then be able to, if they missed potentially one of the pitch sessions or if they want to go get more information, walk around, talk to the founders, see the posters, get some more information, which means that if you have a table, you should bring some materials, right? And so we've always seen companies do really, really well when they have printed out their executive summary or their pitch deck to actually keep at their table with them. And that way they're able to kind of grab the walking investors and pull them in to talk a little bit more about their company, which is a great opportunity to not only take advantage of kind of the high traffic, but also ask attendees to vote for you, right? Just like fundraising, a lot of it is going to come down to kind of hustling, right? Going out and speaking with investors, pulling them into your table, playing that numbers game that we had talked about a little bit earlier. But each company will have a little QR code at their table that the investors can then scan and use to vote for them. And Raul had touched on this, just in the last slide, but we do award prizes to the top three places of IPC. So we determine the placing not only by the judges' scores in the room, but a big majority of the breakdown of ranking is kind of placed on the voting. So both investors as well as other companies are able to vote for companies that are presenting directly through that QR code.
I'll also say, even if you don't win, I think participating really boosts your visibility, especially in your fundraising, rounds. You're trying to get as much visibility, like it's a numbers game. So, you do get listed on the website. You're also featured on the social media. And again, you get to build connections with real investors. So it's still valuable to participate in the IPC and attend Resi.
Yeah, and one thing that we always say is for companies, because any attendee can vote, use this as a catalyst to really get yourself out there. Use the fact that you're pitching to engage in conversation with as many people as possible. You never know what conversation will end up being getting you a meeting or a connection that helps you in the long run that you didn't anticipate. So the more you get yourself out there, the more successful you'll be, not just in an IPC, but also as a general Resi attendee. Use the capability to network with everyone there to really push yourself forward.
Yeah, I don't know how many times we've heard it, but investors have gone up to companies and said, I don't invest in your area, but I know 10 other investors that do. Let me introduce you. So no shock out there. Investors talk to each other, right? So if you can go and connect with any of them, it's a really great opportunity to maybe then get passed along to the right person. So I know we kind of briefly have talked about this, time and time again, so I'll skip over this really quickly. But again, there's a lot of visibility that comes with participating in the IPC outside of just the pitch. Of course, you also get your feature on our website. You get to connect with investors in the judging panel as well as in the audience. And then also the top three do get prizes, which are free tickets to future Resi events. So in a 6-minute presentation, what is the material that should be touched upon? And again, I say this with the caveat that all of this information needs to be touched on a high level. And when you do so, you want to really touch on not only what is the unmet need in market size, you don't want to spend too much time on this because investors are experts. They know that if you are a small molecule developing an early stage oncology drug, right? that is a huge market size, and they're going to know these metrics. So what you want to do is just show that you have a good understanding of where you fit within it. So touch on that information, obviously touch on the technology, share some data that shows that you have the validating points, show the differentiation of your competitive landscape. This is hugely important. So many times we see companies go up there and they say, I have no competitors. And that is not true. Everybody has a competitor, whether it is vertically or horizontally, whether you've done something different. It is important to show that you have a good understanding of kind of where you fit within the marketplace and what differentiates you between your competitors. We also highly recommend touching on the milestones you've achieved, whether that is, intellectual property rights, previous fundraising rounds, highlighting some of the key investors that you have. Touch on these things because it shows that you're able to reach inflection points, which is really kind of what investors want to see, is see that you're able to do what you say you are, because that way when you turn around and tell them your raise and where it should get you in terms of milestones and inflection points, they know that you've done it in the past. And then also choose another theme to talk about, whether it be the management team, key opinion leaders, or any funding that you've received to date. Honestly, we recommend touching about all three of these things because they're really important. And one of the ways that we recommend doing so is in a Gantt chart. And Karen, I'll let you talk a little bit about what a Gantt chart is, the format, and how that looks.
Yeah, sure. So a Gantt chart is a great way for you to be able to share with an investor your timeline. And so a lot of companies, what we'll do is they'll make it both retrospective and prospective. So they'll show what they've raised, what they've accomplished, what milestones they've accomplished, how much they're looking to raise, and what milestones they'll accomplish along the way. And so it's a visual tool that's really designed to be able to help investors see very, very quickly whether or not what milestones you've already achieved and what milestones you're going to achieve.
And we can now dive into some of the tips that we have for when you actually get up there and present your company. So messaging tip number one, clearly describe your technology. I know this seems so obvious, but it is so important to do so in a way that is clear. And what we mean by that is don't be too vague. If you're going to go up there and say, my company has a proprietary treatment for many critical illnesses, that is great, but it is also just a lot of buzzwords. And what it doesn't do is give any indication to the investor as to what your modality is, as to what your specific indication is, and what is your differentiating factor. What you want to do is be able to create a tagline that addresses all of that information in a very specific way. So what we mean by that in the example that we have on the screen is, rather than saying the vague term, touch on what exactly it is you're doing. So say we are developing an IND-ready small molecule asset for breast cancer by activating natural killer cells. So an example like that and a tagline like that touches not just on the modality and the indication, but also what's different. Here in this example, they're activating natural killer cells. Are their competitors doing that? Is that an industry standard, or is that their differentiating factor? That's the type of information that will immediately let investors know what it is you're doing and whether or not they're interested in that first meeting. It's also so important to be realistic with your statements, right? Investors out there are experts on the market. So they know the competitors out there. They know kind of where they stand if they have previous milestones as well. They also know information on the novel products, right? So it's important that you show that you have a good understanding of where your company fits within the environment and the landscape, because if you can do so, it also is a good indication that you know where you're going.
Yeah, and just to add on that, I think knowing, investors need to understand exactly what you do in plain language. You have 6 minutes, it needs to be high level, but you also need to be able to differentiate yourself and deliver that message. And another thing that Max touched upon is knowing your competition, like he's mentioned, even though you feel like you don't have a competitor, you always do. And I think what that shows is, that you have credibility, you understand the market, and it's not necessarily showing weakness in your company, but more so showing that how you market yourself and how your product is delivering in that competitive landscape. And with that, you don't want to overhype, or you want to be realistic. So credibility is more important than charisma in this instance.
Yeah, yeah. Be be passionate, but be realistic. We did get a couple questions here. One about asking about the format of the executive summary. So in terms of marketing collateral, we always recommend that you have a 2-page written executive summary, a 10 to 12 slide pitch deck, and a 1-page data sheet that's in bullet point form. And the reason we suggest having all three is that inevitably investors will look at just one of the three. Everyone has their preferred method, their preferred type of marketing collateral. So just give them all of the options and let them choose which one they look at.
Yeah, and funny enough, it's typically pretty evenly split, right? So Karen, I forget which one is your favorite to look at.
Pitch deck. I'm
Karen
definitely
likes
pitch
the
deck.
Karen likes the pitch deck. When I look at a company, I like to see their executive summary, and then Raul or the other investor may choose to look at their um, one-page data sheet, right? That tear sheet.
Yeah.
So investors out there just kind of have a natural preference. Give them all three because it makes it easy for them, right? And then I see another question from Jennifer. Is there a visual example of a Gantt chart? We have many examples of executive summaries and pitch decks that we have in the past that used Gantt charts. We have those in a document called the Resi Survival Guide. We will make sure to send that out to all the attendees of this webinar. Unfortunately, we don't have one in this PowerPoint right now, but we'll make sure to send that out. Awesome. Messaging tip number 2. Karen, do you want to go over this one?
Absolutely. So explain your current company status in detail. So really the key to anything that you're doing with a pitch is to be clear but concise, and use detailed language. So you don't want to just use general statements about, being an experienced entrepreneur or experience in the industry. State what it is specifically, like what companies was the CEO at, like how many specific years of experience in this area does the CEO have, or specific molecules that they've worked with, whatever it may be, or devices or whatever it is. Just use detailed language and really avoid ambiguous statements. And this is for everything. It's very difficult, but the more detailed language that you can use, quantitative as opposed to qualitative, the better an impression you make.
And then messaging tip number 3 is going to be to summarize both the near term and the long term strategy. And this is a tip that we often see get a little bit overlooked because it's not necessarily one that you need within a specific slide, but a point that you can get across throughout the entirety of the presentation. So what it means is being able to kind of state that not only this is where we are, but this is where we're going. I mean, again, that Gantt chart is a great way to do so, but some of the steps that you can take in order to not only show that is especially showing use of funds. So if you're going to go up there and say, this is our ask, be able to show that maybe this is the ask in order to get us into phase one, to initiate these types of studies and have a very clear understanding of exactly the data and the inflection points you will need to get to that next milestone. You also want to be able to summarize some of the key relationships, whether that be on your team or externally. So if you have specific key opinion leaders, potential, advisory board members that are on your team, certainly highlight those people, but also highlight any external partnerships you have, whether you're piloting in a system, if you have, a CDMO that you're working with that is really reputable. Those are all sources of validation for investors. And when you can show that you are working with other, successful and really experienced key players, all of that is just another source of validation. Also touch on your patents, right? So if you have a ton of patents and you have a big IP portfolio, certainly touch on those. If you don't, it's important to show that you have patent applications and that you're aware of where you stand there. Whether it be a current patent in filing or if you're waiting for approval on one, that's still a good opportunity for you to address that you have, potential to acquire patents. Don't just go up there and say, "Oh, I don't have any patents. I don't know if I'm going to get any patents." Show that you have a process and a plan to acquire those. Um,
That or trade secrets.
I'm sorry.
I said that or trade secrets.
hmm Yeah,
Some
because
sort of IP.
exactly because providing a strategy is better than just a simple yes or no answer, as that bullet reads. And then lastly is provide enough information, but don't go overboard. I know we've kind of said this a number of times now too, but this is the movie trailer. So a paragraph or two is going to be good enough to describe your company at high enough of a level that it warrants interest from the investors. So whether it is a 6 minute pitch like this one or a 10, 30, even an hour long pitch, you are probably the expert in your technology and the investor is not, right? So what you need to be able to do is get the point across in not only a simple and effective way, but give them the opportunity to then pull in an expert of their own team who can then really go in depth. You want to provide them the information in a way that is digestible. Um, and we say that at a high level, but there's also the opportunity for them to then go in and see more information in both your pitch deck and your executive summary. So they should already have some sort of awareness as to kind of who you are and where you stand.
Yeah, and I'll just add that all this information is packaged in a way not only to talk about, obviously the main asset is the product or the technology developing, but also having a story of your company and like the strategic insights or relationships, background on your company itself that helps because investors are also investing in the company itself, which includes the people associated with it. So this package can really help you market yourself with these investors.
Yeah, and that is so, so true. At the early stage, technology and information is bound to face some adversity and change. And we see investors put such a large emphasis on the management team because they know this. So it's really important to show not just the technology and not just focus on the data and the tech, um, but to show that you have assembled and you are the right management team to effectively, navigate the journey of fundraising. Because when you sign a term sheet and when you get presented a term sheet, that is a commitment. Investors want to be able to rely on you to then navigate any type of adversity that will come. So again, just some of the potential topics that you should address and discuss both within investor questions and potentially throughout, obviously the presentation is going to be technology, regulatory, fundraising, management team, market competition. And so these examples and these bullet points are some of the questions that we see get asked most commonly. Um, Obviously, investors will and should always ask for a little bit more information on the technology. Whether it is they want to see a little bit more data on a specific, milestone that you may have brought up in the past. So these are just examples of questions to be ready for. One of the things that we've seen companies do really well is prep for these questions, and you can do so in an appendix. So if you have, we'd say 10 slides, 10 to 12 slides at most for 6 minutes, you can throw in a ton of slides in the back, right? And that way, if an investor asks you a question, let's say they say, "What are some of the key competitors out there?" And you touch upon this in the presentation, but you then want to go into a little bit more detail on the differentiation between your company and theirs, have that slide prepared. That way, if that question does come up, you can, flip a few slides and show them in more detail. And the same is true with obviously all of the other topics out there.
There's a question in the chat. Is the IPC different from investor meetings that we can set up via the portal? I would say yes, because with the IPC, your exposure is to more than just a single investor, and also you have the audience there as well. So that the portal is more of a one-on-one interaction, and Karen can attest to that and talk a little more about that. But yes, the difference is that you have more exposure to more investors and big audience.
Yes. So the one-on-one meetings that you schedule through the platform will generally be with investors that are saying, okay, yes, we're going to look at this conversation for potential investments. That is the purpose of the meeting. For the IPC, it can certainly lead to an investment, and we've definitely seen that happen. But the one of the bigger purposes is also for a company to get feedback from investors to increase exposure to all attendees as opposed to just that one person that they're meeting with. And also just to kind of be able to interact with multiple investors in one go. So it is a little bit different. The one thing I will also just to kind of track back to what we were talking about, the different questions. It's okay to say you don't know. It's better to say you don't know than make up an answer. Investors will know that you're making up an answer, and it doesn't make a good impression. So if you need to say, I need to look into that a little bit more, that's fine. It's better than, trying to create an answer on the fly.
Yeah. And so again, the IPC it's an entirely separate track than the standard partnering. I see a question came in asking more about the format of partnering. When you get registered for Resi, and you get put into the partner portal, which is open now, you'll be able to go in there and filter down investors to identify those that are a match and then send them meeting requests. Those meeting requests will be 30-minute meeting slots, for one-on-one meetings. So it will get added to your agenda. You'll be given a table number and a specific time to go have that one-on-one meeting. All of those in person will be taking place in, that main ballroom area, and there'll be a ton of tables with table numbers out there. If you get assigned a virtual meeting slot, either because the investor is attending virtually only, or if hopefully you have a full schedule and you can't do it in person, you will then get assigned and sent a video link, for either, again, the virtual on the 17th, 18th, or 23rd.
And you can put your pitch deck online. So you can post it in your profile, and we definitely recommend you do that. So investors generally do review the decks before the meetings take place. And the format of the meeting is just a half hour. You do with that what you will. We definitely recommend that you do it in the form of a conversation, not in you running through your pitch at them. We've seen companies get a lot better response rates when they have when they just have it as a conversation with the investor.
Perfect. So again, a lot of the tips that we shared today, are valuable not just for IPC, but for partnering and any kind of pitch that you may be doing. Um, the pitch deadline again for Resi Boston this June is going to be this Wednesday. So a quick turnaround. This Wednesday is the pitch deadline, which means that if you're interested in pitching directly to that not only investor specific panel, but also taking advantage of full partnering, the pitch, the table, the exhibition space, the poster, and all of the added marketing material, please get that application in before Wednesday. So tomorrow by end of day, there's a QR code up here in the top right that you can start your application at. You can even go in there and save it and come back to it later. Um, but thank you guys all for coming and attending. We'll send all these slides out as well as the recording. And we look forward to hopefully seeing all of you at Resi Boston this June.
And definitely feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Yes, all of our emails are up here right at the beginning. So please feel free to reach out directly if you have any questions. We're happy to get them answered and help you guys make sure that you're really taking advantage of the 450 investors that we're expecting, to participate in partnering at Resi Boston this June.